It is the 20th of January 2025. Jame plays his first game for PARIVISION just 1 month after being benched by Virtus.pro. They are an unranked team losing their first official game together against Monty with a new lineup. Fast forward to January 25th, 2026, just over 1 year later, they win their first Tier 1 event by beating the first, second and fourth best teams in the world and 3-0 in the final. How has this happened? I haven't seen a meteoric rise like this in a very long time. Going from completely unranked to world number 3 in just 1 year is insane, and it's even more impressive when you realise just how much money the established Tier 1 teams pour in to stay competitive. And yet, PARIVISION has blown past most of them, doing it in their own way with their own vision. That's why I've decided to lean on my coaching expertise to make a deep dive on this roster, breaking down exactly what makes this lineup click so well and why they're performing at such an elite level right now. Firstly, I think we have to talk about the signing of a new superstar, Xylo. I've always rated this player very highly with his time on Gun 5, but his consistency so far with PARIVISION as an aggressive rifler has been astonishing. It's no surprise to me that the 3 events he did poorly in ended up being 3 of the most disappointing events of the second half of the year, because I believe that he's simply that important to the lineup. And he's acting as a true star in terms of positions, with the exception of a few, for example on Inferno. He is the main guy and making plays all of the time. When you can find someone with top level consistency in these star roles, then you've struck absolute gold. And for sure, this is a massive reason why they have been propelled to the top. And his numbers are actually better against the better teams he plays against, which even suggests that he understands the decision making of the top players more than some of the randomness of those nearer to the top 50 in the lower levels of Pro CS. On that T side, he reminds me a lot of Flamesy. In that sense of when PARIVISION ends a round, he almost always finds himself grouping up and then going in first. But unlike Flamesy, he just has way more space in this team, and he has all the map control positions to take away space from the CTs on his terms. In Vitality, they focus a lot more on setting up ROPs and Zywoo, and so that responsibility is more shared. But here, on the T sides, Xylo is that main man. And it is that T side that really stands out for PARIVISION. The stats back it up. They're ranked 3rd in terms of round win percentage against the top 30 in the last 6 months, and they actually have the best trading numbers in the entire world. But it isn't only Xylo performing on these T sides. I've never seen a split so evenly across the team, and it seems like the roles are just absolutely perfectly balanced. If you compare this to the top teams in the world like Vitality, Falcons or Furia, we see a clear trend of the star players excelling and the supportive players being way behind. It is a system that is clearly working. So the T sides are working, Xylo is a real deal, but we cannot talk about PARIVISION without talking about the Messiah himself, Jame. Jame has had a true revelation here, and if we compare his stats from the last 7 months on Virtus.pro to the last 7 months on PARIVISION, then it really looks like a player who has been resurrected, and you just have to highlight his kill-death ratio, because it shows just how annoying he is to play against. Jame always has an AWP. When we play against him, one of the things that I say is expect Jame to have an AWP even when it seems impossible, because it really does feel like they have a hidden money cheat feeding him AWPs when you expect them to be on a full eco. I also feel like Jame has been and remains to be one of the absolute best clutchers in World Counter-Strike. Yes, he saves a lot, but when his back is against the wall, he just seems to be able to win an inhuman amount of 1v2s and 1v3s. I've actually decided to compare Jame in the last 6 months to the ranked 1, 3, 4 and 5 players of 2025, who I also consider to be most of the best clutchers in the world. And Jame ranks right up there with them. I'm highlighting this because I don't believe Jame to be anywhere near these players in terms of skill level, but he's the second best at winning 1v2s and the second best at 1 versus 3s. This is an open game leader, rated 1.13 in the last 6 months, who also wins clutches at the same rate or better than 4 of the 5 best players in the world. I didn't include Donk in these clutches because, well, he just doesn't play in or win that many of them. This is simply to explain just how bonkers Jame is doing on an individual level as the best performing in-game leader in the world right now. I'm not sure if this team would work anywhere near as well as it does without Jame being reunited with his previous and major winning coach, Dastan. I think this quote best highlights their relationship within the team and gives us an insight into some of the clips we're about to see, which otherwise might seem a little bit extreme. As an in-game leader, you will often have many frustrations about mistakes being made, plans not being followed and other things like poor communication from teammates. But you also need complete trust from your players. So many teams have a dynamic where the coach is the bad cop and the IGL is the good cop. The in-game leader focuses more on the positive leadership mentality, and the coach focuses on pointing out mistakes and providing solutions so they aren't repeated in the future. The coach can also serve as someone who maintains high standards by calling out players in a harsh way when they are slacking. It's an interesting use of human psychology, inserted into a Counter-Strike team. Something that Jame frequently talks about on his YouTube channel when it comes to the mental side of the game. Here is a short clip from the man himself, taken from James' YouTube channel, with permission of course.
Он еще это говорит. Я понимаю, что вот когда вот взаимодействие игрока и тренера, да, ты молодой игрок, скорее всего 9 из 10, если не больше, я прав. По любой, из-за опыта и, ну, опыт, ладно. Ну, я не всегда бываю прав, но когда ты это говоришь, и он тебе так отвечает, я еще раз ему говорю, он мне еще раз говорит. Потом я включаю запись, он мне это говорит. И все, надо додушивать, ты уже кричишь, и все. И я не могу эту ситуацию, грубо говоря, оставить и дать ему шанс, чтобы он поверил, что он еще типа на секунду прав. И, ну, это мое поведение. Я, бля, хуярю с ним до конца. Ну, не подумайте, что там есть там драки, конфликты, такого нет. Строго эмоции.
I think that this approach with a young team is a great way to get the team on the same page as quickly as possible. He is extremely direct and passionate about ensuring that his team thinks the same way about the game as he does. There are moments where from the outside it does look maybe too direct, but so far from them it is working out amazingly. They are here to win, and the Russian approach to the game from my experience vastly differs to the European one if we take this clip as an example.
Я говорю, я не играю в роль, что мы там сидим, супер мы команда, друг друга все любим и так далее. Все мы понимаем, что мы здесь для результата.
They treat it as a result-based business. They aren't considering themselves as a family that loves each other. They are here to learn, grind, and get results. So how is this direct approach working out for them? Well, the map pool is currently looking superb, and if anything, the removal of train will actually buff them further, as it was their weakest map with only a 41% win rate. If we remove train entirely, then their win rate jumps to a staggering 75.5% in the last 6 months. And they might even get better because in the first 6 months of the year, back when they were struggling and much weaker and more inconsistent, Anubis still had a 60% win rate. So brighter things may even be coming for this lineup. It's even Zway's second best map statistically. Let's look at how this looks on the server. When you think of Jame and Dastan, you think of slow T-sides that grind out the late rounds and lots and lots and lots of saving. Well, if that was James' identity, then it seems like his second coming has thrown that mentality out of the window. This is an aggressive and fast-playing T-side that loves to group up and simply batter their opponents. The trade-based gameplay is outstanding. It really seems like they treat Nota, Zelo, and Zway like they have 3 flamesies who want to sprint at opponents and blow their heads off together. But there's more to it than that. I think they're playing to the inexperienced players that they have and allowing them to do what they do best. But there's some great variety being thrown in there by Jame, and this is what I believe is making them a nightmare to play against. I think this is a typical round that sums them up best. They start off with the basic default, with Jame being boosted to see that Aurora aren't playing aggressive into the low tunnels. Xylo and Nota work together closely, and when Xylo loses a duel, Nota quickly trades him. A smoke is thrown to fake the mid B split, and then they group short and explode, with Velchinok this time lurking long and catching a great timing onto Major. A few rounds later, we see the same mentality, with PARIVISION grouping short as early as 1 minute and 28 in the round. Xylo and Nota are close together again, and this time they hunt down Woxic and then they explode with the mindset of, we will trade you down. On the decider map, we see that same simplicity again, with many rounds this half them playing completely without an A lurker, which is extremely uncommon. On this round, they set up for an early B split, but lose 2 quick entries to a typical Xantares multikill. And the very next round, they repeat the call but going much faster, in for a fully set B split. They will do the same idea but slower in round 9, again with no A player. And on the last 2 rounds of the half, they group as 5 at A and execute together. So why is this working at the top level? I think the most comparable T-side is probably the system that Aurora run, but there's way more subtle details to this system. Firstly, the change of utility is taken more care of. In this round, we see a window plus connector smoke combination from spawn, and Zway faking middle control with a Molotov and a flash. They regroup and execute A. But the previous round, they simply threw a window and a top middle smoke with nobody faking a middle default and did exactly the same execute. These small details make them much harder to read on these brute force rounds. Moments like here, where PARIVISION line up for a 4-man B explode, where Nota is faking the shot control with his Molotov, and then the B split with his smoke to try and draw away the B rotation player. It isn't special in itself, but it's masking their simplicity when they want to run something more set and basic. A common pattern that I noticed in their Inferno game against Falcons is just how heavy they lean into their group and trade mentality. The starts of rounds look normal, the A players pressure the middle, and the B players fight for banana control. Then, the banana player joins A for the A hit, and the apps player joins B for the B hit. There are very few lurks going on. This is a typical example from that game. Belchinok kills Monacy whilst defaulting in his position. The 3 B players apply some banana pressure, and then they group up at A without a B lurker or even an apps player, and they run in with minimal utility to trade the opponents. You have a 5v4, so trading mathematically works out, and they do it. But Jame is a very smart guy, and he understands that this cannot be the only way that they play. And I did notice multiple situations like this one, where Jame spent almost 30 seconds holding shot control with his AWP alone, whilst his teammates group B. A common sentiment at tier 1 is that if you see the AWP, then most likely he isn't alone. And if PARIVISION love to group and you know that the AWP isn't alone, then most likely it's an A hit, right? A common move on Inferno when you lose middle control is to try and retake it for the information. And if Jame was spotted, then it most likely would have created chaos at B, as they never would be expecting 4 players there. When you don't often use lurks, then it means that when you do use them, they become significantly more productive, as the other teams know your tendencies are to group as 5 and go together. On this round, PARIVISION are taking cave control with 2 players closely trading each other and Zwei throwing support utility. On a typical round, PARIVISION would be heavily grouped and they would go into an ending. And so, Nilo pushes A, expecting to find lots of free space and potentially a flank. On this round, however, Jame has nailed the balance, and so Belchinok has the easiest kill of his life, making the round into a simple 5v3 which they easily convert. I think Jame and dastan are doing a fantastic job on these T sides of adapting to the pieces that they have, and Jame making a huge amount of variation to make them extremely difficult to read, which is a frequent problem that a team like Aurora has been unable to find answers to. On the CT side, this variation is absolutely there as well. There's a huge mixture of aggression, heavy rotates, and completely standing still. In this one map alone against Heroic, we can see all of the above. On the first buy round, PARIVISION quickly lose information at middle, and so Nota and Zwei abandon their plan and push the B ramp together. They move us 2, trade Nilo, and then quickly rotate back towards the window where the pressure is being applied by Heroic. The next buy round we see almost exactly the same situation, of Heroic applying fast middle pressure and Jame being in window. But this time Zwei and Nota decide to leave B entirely and regain that middle control. It doesn't work out for them, but it's a great example of seeing variations to their game with a team mostly full of rookies. For this last example, I want you to pause the video and predict the next move after I explain it. PARIVISION are in that exact same scenario. Jame is smoked off in the window with no info, Zwei and Nota are on B. The difference is that PARIVISION don't have a great economy. Pause now and guess what PARIVISION will do. This is a third example in the same situation, and this time we see the old Virtus Pro mentality kick in. You have a big lead at 11-6, you have no money, and you have no information. Why not take a risk that could win you the game here and now? If Heroic go A, you save, and you make sure nobody dies. If they come B, you're here as 5, and then it's a free round. At 52 seconds left on the clock, PARIVISION block Donut with a smoke and gamble 4B and 1 window. In this situation, Belchinok kills the window lurk, and PARIVISION quickly pivot back to A with a man advantage. And for the last round of the game, we see this same pattern of a 3v start and 1 window. But this time, they play the mid round completely in the dark and gamble on a B hit, which eventually comes for an easy hold with 4 alive. They are ticking every box and playing the percentages. This is pure experience and control from Jame, and it is a nightmare to play against. Heroic tried really hard to mess with PARIVISION rotations, but PARIVISION responded in a way that they simply did not care, and that their rotations would be in their control and not Heroic's. On top of all of this, the lineup has an average age of only 21.3 years old, with their second oldest player being Belchinok at 22 years old. That combination of experience with the in-game leader and coach, and hunger and an eagerness to learn from their core riflers has blossomed under this leadership. It's also worth mentioning that the trajectory of Nota is seriously on the rise, as he gains more experience and confidence at the highest level. He has been a very highly rated young player for some time in the Russian scene, and it appears that he is fulfilling this potential. There are a few potential downsides that could be worth noting. This is a very inexperienced team after all. Firstly, the trajectory of Belchinok is the opposite to Nota, but the only positional change that I noticed was that he moved from Apsanka on Inferno to the A rotation, which in theory should provide him with better numbers. This could also be easily explained by the level of opponent being much higher, as they fly through the ranks to play better teams. And if that is the case, it is absolutely normal. Another one to mention is simply how well the fitting of Zwei has been. This one feels more like a fairy tale moment, as his first game ever with PARIVISION is literally in the Blast Bounty that they shocked everyone by winning. He wasn't really setting the world alight on Spirit, and it seems unlikely that he's picked up everything that he needs to know in his PARIVISION system already. Personally, I think he is an exceptional pickup and an extremely underrated player with massive potential. It's just something worth noticing to maybe temper expectations slightly from the fan side of things. Blast Bounty was also the first tournament of the year, and it could be as simple as most teams just aren't in shape yet, and they took full advantage. IM Cracker that followed was a bit of a mixed bag. 2 impressive wins against Aurora and Heroic, followed by 2 disappointing losses against Na'Vi and Astralis. But I don't think it's as simple as downplaying their Blast run. When you have a lot of success with a mostly young team, it is extremely likely that egos will be inflated and overconfidence will creep in. A small step back like this could be exactly the learning curve that they need to stay focused and on track. With the Anubis addition back to the map pool favouring them, and a playstyle that is constantly varied and unpredictable, it seems as though PARIVISION have truly struck gold and this exciting team could be here for a very long time. I really enjoyed researching this team, and if you enjoyed the video then please let me know in the comments. I am starting to stream a little bit more on Twitch, so if you're interested in that then please drop a follow. As always, see you next time.